If you enjoy what you hear here today, please consider supporting me on my Patreon page. Every dollar helps, and you get to see content that you won't see here. Chapter 19, Queen Draco, Part 2. A single, giant eyeball glanced between the two groups, and then the previously sleeping form began to rise up from the ground with a deafening roar. A paw, with claws big and sharp enough to slice clean through the town hall in Ponyville, rose up and then slammed down directly on top of the drone who had fired the spell that had hit it in the nose. The creature then fully rose to all fours, striking out at Twilight's group next. Scatter! All 10 of them jumped to the side, quick enough just to avoid the vast paw. Queen Draco and her changelings being forced to do the same as a second paw came for them.
Yeah, get to the passageway!
Twilight commanded, making sure the group had begun fleeing before she herself turned to run. The Ursa Major seemed to become distracted away from Twilight and her allies when Draco used a magical shield to save herself from being flattened, the creature becoming enraged and beating against the magic bubble. Queen Draco's drones, however, did notice them fleeing, and all took to the air in an effort to catch up. As the changelings passed by the Ursa Major, the creature's rage-filled eyes locked onto them, and it turned all of its attention to the hapless drones. The Ursa Major opened its great maw wide and lunged forwards, consuming all the changelings before they could react. The beast then turned it back to Queen Draco, who, during the Ursa Major's momentary distraction, had taken to the air and begun firing beams of magic at the gargantuan animal. With both their enemies being held up, Twilight Sparkle and her companions made it to the shaft safely. The Queen glanced back to see Draco skillfully and gracefully avoiding every strike the Ursa Major made, combating it quite effectively. Shining Armor grabbed onto her and pulled her forwards, encouraging her to forget the scene behind them and continue their escape. Twilight complied, joining the others as they scampered down the hallway, and the sound of the now distant battle fell away into silence. The corridor they ran down was long, but held no detours. Thankfully, they could see glimpses of the tiniest amount of sunlight seeping in from the end, and the amount of sunlight increased rapidly as they progressed. Then, at long last, they burst out of the mountain and into the embrace of the open outdoors. They found themselves coming to a stop on a rocky plateau quite high up on the mountainside, and down below the vast forest could be seen. There was no visible pathway leading up to the mine's entrance, and having long faded away due to time. The only way down was a steep but walkable incline down into the forest. And the entrance itself was largely hidden by an outcropping of rocks, and it having been long forgotten and only now rediscovered. Oh, the sun! Thanks, Celestia! Vladimir half shouted in relief. I was starting to think I'd never see it again. Ursa Majors, changelings, Shining Armor muttered. I'm about ready to go home and face my wife's wrath now, I think. Twilight nodded in agreement.
Yes, I think we should leave.
Twilight's 9 companions all walked to the edge of the plateau and looked down the incline past it exhaustedly. Twilight herself stood apart from the rest of the group, looking at the forest for any sign of the afflicted changelings that might have been waiting for them. We're going down that, Vladimir groaned. Can't we take a break? We should keep moving a while yet, Broadsword stated. We're not in the clear. How far do we have to go, sir? One of the guards asked. I'd say until we reach the other side of the forest, and then Spike can send Princess Celestia a message. Get an extraction sent for us. Spike nodded in agreement. I can do that. Just give me the word. A green pulse of magic impacted Queen Twilight's 9 companions and sent them off the edge of the plateau, rolling uncontrollably down the following incline. Twilight shot around, seeing Queen Draco standing by the entrance to the mine with a rage-filled expression on her face, her horn glowing a bright green as it prepared another spell.
Draco, no!
Draco launched her spell at Twilight, and it impacted harmlessly against Twilight's suddenly raised shield. However, Draco tailed her attack closely and smacked right into Twilight's shield with another spell empowering her body, enough so to break through the shield and tackle the other changeling queen. The two queens both rolled in a heap down the side of the mountain, in a different direction to where the others had fallen, only coming to a stop when they hit a flatter area. Twilight shakily got to her hooves, only to catch a green glow in the corner of her eyes. The queen was just able to roll out of the way of the magical bolt in time, rising back to her hooves and firing back in retaliation, albeit reluctantly. Draco countered each and every single one of Twilight's spells as she charged forwards, the two queens locking horns moments later and battling for dominance. Each tried to push back against the other, only to find themselves in a stalemate. Then, almost simultaneously, the two both broke off the lock and ignited their magic to form two swords made of pure energy. And they both struck towards the other with their own blades, causing them to lock together, just as their horns did a moment earlier, lavender and green magic sparking wildly from their violent contact.
Gah! Draco!
Twilight shouted out pleadingly.
I found the note you left for me! I know you're fighting this! Let me help you! I no longer require saving,
Draco spat.
I live to serve, as all queens do. Serve? Serve who?
Draco chuckled sadistically.
Can't you hear her? That presence in your mind, the one who will return us to our ancient glory. You sound like Crudelis! Crudelis. A servant, even if she never realized it. You foiled those plans, but it matters little in the end.
Twilight grunted as her magic began to weaken.
A servant? What are you talking about? Crudelis only ever served herself! So she believed,
Draco said cryptically.
You shall understand all soon. Just submit!
The regalia on Draco's chest glowed, and the pressure in Twilight's mind, a far more severe version of the one she felt at both the Council Hive and in the ancient ruins, began to consume her. She gave a shout of pain and stumbled back, breaking the lock. Draco struck forwards with her blade, and Twilight was barely able to block it. The presence was threatening the sanctity of Twilight's mind, and she drew upon all of her mental defenses, as well as the strength of her hive mind to combat it. She was losing, however, and a red glow flickered momentarily in the corner of Twilight's eyes before dissipating again.
Submit!
Draco growled, trading a few more blows with Twilight.
No! Never!
Twilight shouted in defiance. She parried another strike, proceeding to then disengage her blades and gather the magic in her horn and fire one devastating beam at Draco. The beam impacted the queen's chest and sent her flying backwards and onto the ground, the regalia's glow flickering out from the impact.
Ah! You insolent fool!
Draco raged. The pressure in Twilight's mind lessened, but before she was able to fully recover, Queen Draco created a portal and sank into the ground. A second later, she emerged again right next to Twilight, who span around to try and intercept the changeling queen. However, her mind was still foggy from the mental attack, and thus was thoroughly unprepared for Draco delivering a hard buck to her torso. Twilight hit the ground with a loud thud, becoming still. Her breathing was labored, the wind having been taken out of her. As she tried to get up, an excruciating shock forced her back to the ground. Looking up, she saw Queen Draco had green-colored electrical energies dancing around her crooked horn, ready to shock the younger changeling queen again should she try anything.
Draco, don't.
Twilight managed to say.
I'm your friend. As you were friends with my mother, you have to remember.
Twilight swore she saw recognition briefly flash in Draco's eyes, but her steely expression remained unchanged.
You may have damaged her influence on the outside world with your attack, but I can still enlighten you personally,
Draco stated.
Who is she?
Twilight bellowed.
Who is it you're forced to serve? I am not forced. I serve willingly and faithfully. Draco, those are not your thoughts. Your hive mind is corrupted. Fight it! I do not wish to fight,
Draco stated, her conviction fading.
I cannot, Twilight.
Twilight's eyes widened, hope returning.
Draco, you've already been fighting her. You can continue to do so. I can help you. No. No, my friend.
Draco said shakily, then letting out a scream as she clutched her head in untold amounts of pain.
She is... I can't! Who is she? The Ancient One. Come back to reclaim what she believes is hers.
Draco muttered.
Her name... Get out of my head! Draco!
Twilight went to stand, only to be shocked back into submission once more.
Stay down, whelp!
Draco shouted in a rage.
You cannot defy our... No!
The struggling changeling queen clutched her head once more, though only for a moment. A resolute and yet resigned expression crossed her features. The energies in Draco's horn increasing and causing the electrical charge to rise up to a lethal amount. Draco looked down on the daughter of her best friend, and she smiled sadly.
My friend, I'm sorry.
The magic in Draco's horn inverted, and then fired back down the horn, and into the changeling queen's skull.
Draco, no!
The magical energies rapidly spread throughout Draco's body, locking her limbs in place. She didn't scream, not that she could have, and neither did she break off the magic, despite the obvious pain. She could have stopped the flow at any time, but she kept on going as Twilight could only watch helplessly, with tears pouring down her distressed lavender eyes. Draco, as time began to slow down for her, regretted subjecting Twilight to the sight. However, she did not regret the action itself. She was doing what she had to. It was the only way to save Twilight Sparkle from her. She owed that much to Queen Chrysalis, her friend since she was a nymph, and one she was greatly looking forward to seeing again. Then, the magic finally stopped, Draco's glassy eyes still looking down at her friend. Her legs gave way, and her lifeless body slumped to the floor. Queen Draco, friend and close ally to both Queen Chrysalis and then Queen Twilight Sparkle, was dead. Twilight could only stare at the sight, shaking terribly. Her mind was blank, though perhaps that was a good thing, as it confirmed that presence was gone. Tears continued to stream down her face, her magic coming into action and closing Draco's eyes gently. She couldn't believe it. She was meant to save her friend. She should have done something. Anything. Those thoughts played in her mind over and over, and she barely registered a call from off to one side. After a few more attempts, the voice caught Twilight's attention, and she saw her 9 companions, all alive and overall intact, all of them staring wide-eyed at the sight. Twilight? Shining Armor gingerly approached, placing a hoof on the distraught mare's shoulder, his instinct as a big brother kicking in. Hey, I'm here. You're gonna be alright. Twilight took several deep breaths in and out before she was eventually able to speak, albeit in a heavily despondent tone.
Are you all alright?
We're fine, Shining assured her, A few bumps and bruises from the fall, but nothing serious. Twilight nodded, rising up and standing over her friend's corpse. She took hold of the regalia and gently pried it from the body, looking at the object with hate. She felt no presence in her mind, the regalia itself being charred from where her magic impacted it. "What is that?" Shining asked.
Whoever is behind this. She was using this to extend her influence. But it looks like I broke it.
"No loss there, then," Shining stated. "What are we gonna do now?"
We'll stick to the plan. Head to the edge of the forest and get an extraction. But now that it's broken, we're taking this thing with us. Perhaps it can give us some insight into our enemy.
"Be careful, Twilight," Shining cautioned. "Are you sure it's broken?"
If it ticks again, I'll hit it even harder,"
Twilight stated hatefully.
"This thing caused my friend's death. I will find its owner, and I will kill them!"
"Twilight," Shining began, but got cut off.
But before any of that, we must bury her.
Twilight commanded.
I will not leave her here to rot in the sun.
That was a sentiment Shining Armor couldn't deny, and all of them pitched in to help, none of them wishing the surviving Changeling Queen to do it alone. And so it was that, when the job was done, the group departed and headed down the mountains and back into the canopy of the forest. As they left, so too did they leave behind them the final resting place of Queen Draco.